Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis, a podcast dedicated to the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case. Join us as we seek the truth and travel the long road to justice. Hi, everybody. I am Gigi.
And I'm Fruit Loop.
Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. It is Sunday, and we haven't had a lot of news about the case over the weekend, but we had a list of topics that we were going to talk about on Friday, but we ended up and got the affidavit for Chad. So we covered that. We wanted to do another podcast for you tonight just to go back and cover what we were going to talk about. And so just to get started, we're going to jump right in. We just want to summarize what happened on June the 9th. There was a search warrant executed at Chad Daybell's home. And during that search warrant, they found the remains of Tylee and JJ buried separately on his property. And Chad was subsequently arrested there after he tried to flee. So since June the 9th, Chad's been in jail there in Fremont County on a $1 million bail, same as Lori. She's still being held on $1 million bail. And we have some preliminary hearings coming up, although there has been a date change for Chad's preliminary hearing. That will take place now on August the 2nd and the 3rd. It was originally July 1st and 2nd. So we just wanted to make you aware of that. And I guess the big question everybody's asking right now is, why haven't we heard a cause of death or any kind of upgraded charges? And Fruit Loop, what do you think's going on with that?
I would think that one, it's taken a little bit longer. We know Tylee's remains were, found. Sorry, were not.
They weren't together.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought. I couldn't think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was going to take, I think it's taken a little bit longer for hers. We know JJ was found, wrapped and still, together. So, and I don't think they'll release them separately.
No, I don't think so. I think, I agree with you. Clearly, it's the condition of Tylee's remains is going to be a challenge, especially if there was no obvious physical cause of death. I mean, if they can't look and see that clearly there was trauma to the body, I guess I just assume that they're doing the toxicology route at this point to see if maybe poison was the manner, because I think we would have heard of a cause of death at this point if one were obvious.
Yeah, and doing some research that we've done the last few days, I felt better because of what they can get from bodies that have been, decayed and stuff like that, and burned, and
it's amazing what they can find. We did watch a documentary about forensics with human bodies, and one of the areas they covered was in a situation where they're investigating a homicide and the remains were burned. And they really can find a lot of things just with bones. I was surprised.
Yeah, it was amazing what they could still find.
Right. They could even tell, go in the bone marrow for toxicology stuff. It's just amazing what they can do. And we also know that not all of their remains were burned. They did have on the affidavit that they found human tissue. So I would think, too, that would help with a medical examiner trying to determine a cause of death, if, in fact, it was a poison situation.
Yep.
Yeah. I think we'll maybe hear something soon. It's been since December that they've done Tammy Daybell's autopsy, and we're all anticipating maybe that'll be the next bit of news that we get. It was punted to the Attorney General in Idaho. So it makes me think they've got something. And Nate Eaton actually was on the Nancy Grace podcast probably a couple of months ago. And do you remember what he said about the autopsy if they couldn't determine a cause of death?
Yeah, that they had a lot of digital information that they could bring charges with just that information, and it was a lot of information.
Right. So I felt better after hearing that, because it, with Alex, it was ruled a natural death. Now they've said that his death is still under investigation right now. It's still an open case, and it could be the same situation where maybe they can't find an obvious cause of death with Tammy. But then again, if they do, I wonder if that could help them potentially, if it's a poison thing, if it's a death by poison, could they go back to Alex and test him for that? I don't know, but I would say it's safe to say they could have digital evidence regarding Alex. Why would they keep that open if the autopsy came back natural and they had no reason to believe there was foul play involved? I think that's going to be very interesting to watch.
Yeah, and seeing what they had with Alex's cell phone pings.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be a ton of information with texting and everything involved. So
yeah, and just to expand on that, I think that I would find it hard to believe that investigators are scratching their heads over a lot in this case. Just from the pings at Chad Daybell's property, it seems like these guys took obviously, we all take our phones everywhere. I don't think they realized that they could ping them that close to places. And I think we're going to find that throughout the course of this entire thing, from maybe late 2018, when we know that Lori and Chad first met. I think they probably left a digital trail that they may as well have just, walked around with yellow spray paint following them everywhere. Just a direct line to where they've been for the last year.
Yeah, and it all goes back to, for me, in Melanie Gibbs' interview with Nate, she said, because they, how they thought the world's going to end on July 22nd, that they weren't as careful with the with hiding things.
Yeah, and I think too that, I think if there's any doubt that the cult beliefs played a part, I know a lot of people are still really convinced this is just sort of a convenience / insurance money thing. And I think that plays a part in it, but I really do believe, especially after reading the affidavit about their zombie theories, that these beliefs played a huge role in why everybody's dead.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, but I think that we don't know the half yet. I'm curious to see what comes out in the future. And this was definitely a lot packed in that one little affidavit. For me, it was nice to read some updates to give us an idea. I think investigators, I don't know, I was thinking about this weekend. I think investigators maybe have known for a good while, at least a suspicion about Chad's property. But we know that pinging him to that location isn't enough for a search warrant. Do you think maybe they've known about this for months and they've just had to work this case very tediously to get that warrant? Or do you think this all came at once?
I think it's a combination of just different evidence that they had. And I think the neighbor, one of the last tips about him burning things, when he reported that, I think that was like a red flag. We need to go because you don't know, what he's getting rid of.
Right. We're going to the dump.
Yeah, he's going to the dump. So they see that, and then now the neighbor's saying, "Oh, he's burning things." So that was a red flag that I would think, we need to go now.
Right. And then if you also think about how they were able to ping him within 6 meters of both burial sites, and then getting the confirmation from Tammy Daybell's sister that this is where the pet cemetery is. I'm very aware of it. I think then when all that came together, they had enough, and then we knew what happened next. It's just amazing what these investigators can find. You're never alone.
No.
You're never alone. If you have your phone with you, I think it's crazy how they can track you.
Yes.
All right. So we were looking this weekend about another memorial that was held. It wasn't quite as advertised as the last two. It was probably a very small, intimate memorial for JJ at his old school in Arizona, the Lawrence Institute for Education. And we looked up the school and found that man, this probably was the perfect place for JJ to be when they were in Arizona. What do they do there, Fruit Loop?
It seemed to be a huge, place for special needs people. And I think it was from young kids to adults.
Yeah.
So this would, we've both worked with special needs kids, high school mainly, and it's very important to help them learn how to take care of themselves, shop, that age. So it seemed like this school was hands-on, a great place for him.
Yeah.
To grow and to learn, and just a great environment.
Yeah, the teachers were so upset, and I get it. We both have worked in a high school setting with autistic kids, and it's interesting. I've worked with autistic kids, and then I've worked with regular education kids. The way that you learn every quirk and every little thing about your special needs students is very different than mainstream kids. You have to learn moods, you have to learn triggers, you have to learn habits. And so I really felt for these teachers. They were sobbing. They had some sweet pictures of JJ and happier times there. And I'm sure the last year of his life, if you think about it, his mom from November of 2018 was starting to get involved with Chad, new friends, and I'm sure his routine was just shot.
Yeah, and we know with working with autistic kids, routine is huge.
It is.
Same schedule. It's very routine, and when you get out of that routine, one little simple thing throws you into a behavior that you have to deal with and help fix.
Right.
So his routine was just all over the place.
It had to have been. And on top of that, you have to understand that at that point, he probably wasn't being medicated. So you have this routine where mom's focus has shifted away from him to her new friends, this new guy, her new religion, the podcasts. And I just really hate to think about what JJ might have went through that year with the huge changes, just the no meds, routines probably shot. I bet this school for him, and like a lot of the kids that we've taught, school is a safe haven for autistic kids. So I really feel for those teachers. It has to be devastating to watch, but you really do love these kids as if they're your own. And sometimes I almost felt like I knew the students better sometimes than I knew my teenagers, because you're just so intimately involved with every aspect of their day, whether it's some kids need help eating, going to the bathroom. So you really do bond. And I just thought that was so sad that they had to say goodbye to him.
Yeah. That was a tough one to watch.
Yeah.
So there was an article that was released this week from Julie Rowe.
Oh boy.
Did you see that one?
I saw it.
So she's claiming that Chad sexually assaulted her. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Inside Edition posted a story on Friday. We were going to talk about this on Friday, but Julie Rowe is claiming that Chad Daybell, she was having an energy healing session with him, and that he forcibly kissed her and got on top of her and rubbed himself against her. And I wasn't shocked about that. And I do want to say real quick before we get into this, we briefly discussed this on Friday's podcast. I mistakenly said that it was Melanie Gibb that had made these accusations, and I apologize. It was Julie Rowe, and I said it twice. So sorry. There's so many people, and sometimes they just all bunch up in my head. And
yeah, there's so many people in this case.
Seeing Julie Rowe, but my mouth said Gibb, so I apologize. So on to this story. She didn't report this alleged sexual assault. We don't know that it happened. I'm not one to doubt people. We're just reporting what was said on the internet about this. And she said that Chad cried afterwards.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that. Because she was saying that he was kind of known for grooming women.
Yeah, and I think there was another lady too, actually, that it was an article and it was more than one, so it was like two.
Yeah,
and she kind of claimed the same thing.
Right, and this two other people were told about what Julie told two people at the time it happened. So it does kind of make you think maybe it's a possibility if over a year ago, this was in December of 2018 that this happened. And they had earlier met at a restaurant for a meeting about publishing and then met privately for an energy healing session. And there's a million jokes I can make about that, but I'm not gonna. So, but one interesting thing to me that she said was that Chad would really, with women, say, oh, you were Joan of Arc in a past life or some grand person. And it seems like these women would eat this up. Are women really that gullible?
Yeah, he would go to houses, and I think Eric Smith was one that testified to this. He would go to houses, and it sounded to me like it was almost like fortune telling. Like, you were Joan of Arc in the past life, and like would lay out the whole history of their past lives. And, he would go into houses and do that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what is it with these cult leaders? I mean, if you look at past cult leaders, a lot of times it seems to sort of center around sex. You look at Warren Jeffs, who was the LDS cult leader. It was an offshoot, but I mean, he's in prison for the rest of his life. He was accused of raping teenage girls underage and having children with them. David Koresh had many children with these cult ladies.
Yeah, the mind is a very dangerous thing when you control somebody else's mind.
Oh, yeah. But I think it would be interesting. I would love to read up on the psychology of that. Like, what is it about cult leaders that make them want all these women? I mean, I think Chad had actually talked to some women about polygamy at one of these home meetings. I mean, good grief.
Yeah. And you look, he was married to Tammy for 20-something years, I think, almost 30 years.
Yeah, I really, really wonder how much she knew about his shenanigans. I don't think there are several women who have said that he was kind of flirty.
Yeah. And then you throw in the Melanie Gibb testimony saying when they were going to go walk at the track, aren't you afraid somebody will see you? And she says, oh, nobody really knows what Tammy looks like.
Yeah,
and that's
sad.
Yeah.
But look, I feel sorry for Tammy because if you think about it, I don't think she wanted to move from Utah to Idaho. I think it was a hard thing for her. She had family there and they're uprooting. I don't understand. Really, I don't know if we know what was the actual reason for them moving the Daybells and their children. Did we ever find out if it was a job?
I think I read it was Chad said he had, he heard through the veil or whatever that they needed to move.
That was the promised land or the chosen land in Rexburg, Idaho. But speaking of cults, I did some reading this weekend on cults, and it is a fascinating subject, actually. Once you kind of go down that rabbit hole, I think I was down that rabbit hole for about 3 hours, and I couldn't sleep one night, so I just got my phone and ended up and spent 3 hours reading about cults. It's very interesting.
Yeah. You were sharing with me a little bit about that, and you have some on each person in this case. You see things with Lori, with Melanie, with the other Melanie.
Right.
So share a little bit about that.
So the first thing that I learned, and these are all of these, I'll credit them on Twitter or the website. That should be up this week, by the way. I'm not sure of everybody's name. It was just a lot of articles, some medical journals. But the one thing that I learned is the most common reason people get involved in a cult is they join mostly by accident or on their way to other goals. It's not like they seek out a cult. They meet people and who probably, I guess, is, maybe a cult leader. They're opportunists and they see a need in that person. Maybe they look lost. Maybe they promise them we'll help you get to your goal. But put it this way, the doctor that was doing the psychology article said He was a firm believer that he could take anybody, no matter how religious you are, no matter how wealthy, how poor. And at some point, he could manipulate you into believing pretty much anything he wanted you to. And I think that is scary.
That's very scary.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Patty Hearst, her dad, she was an heiress of the Hearst Empire. She was kidnapped by a political cult. And I think there were ransoms and stuff. But in the end, she's seen on camera robbing the bank with the same group. And she went to jail for that. She went to prison for it. It's called Stockholm Syndrome, where you start to identify with your captor and you may even feel like you're on a team with them. Very interesting stuff. But so how do you get caught in a cult? The first thing that a cult leader does is what they call thought reform. And they manipulate techniques for getting people to do something they otherwise wouldn't do. They make you feel as if you won the friend lottery. Like you have found your people. They're like-minded, and they do what they call a love shower. And they shower you from every direction with attention. Do you see Lori as somebody who could kind of lap up all that attention?
Most definitely. And when you look at like being around like-minded people, you think of Alex and Zulema, Ian and Melanie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're marrying people who are like-minded.
Yeah, there are so many common themes with each couple in this saga, which is the very fast marriages and that sort of thing. And that's for another day. But they said that whether or not it's a trained thing or just an innate ability to manipulate, the cult brainwashing is kind of the same technique they use to brainwash our prisoner interrogations. People make false confessions, and it's because they break you down mentally and convince you did something you didn't do. That's always fascinated me, but it from what this doctor was saying is it's sort of the same technique that cult leaders or members who are recruiting use, is they just know the tricks to get you to trust them really quick.
Yeah, and you think about it, you like being around somebody who's telling you, you're this or you're that, you're pretty, you're, amazing. I go back and remember the podcast with Jason Mao, Melanie Gibb, and Lori, and that's one of the things Jason Mao said from the get-go. When I saw you, I looked into your eyes, and I knew you were one of us. Yeah,
and it's clear that, and we've talked before about how family members say that Lori was a good mom. They never would have seen this coming before Chad came in the picture. But, I mean, she's on her fourth marriage with Charles. It does seem like she's looking for something she hasn't found yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, essentially, it's deception. They mislead you as to the true activities of that cult initially just to get your trust and to get you sort of indoctrinated and get that sense of I'm safe with these people. And then... What were you going to say?
I was going to just say, it's the terminology that people dance around. They don't like hearing the term brainwashing or cult or something like that. But when you look at it, that's what it is.
You have to call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
And then one of the other ways that they sort of get you is by isolation. And so they take you from, and it's kind of, you see this a lot in domestic violence where an abuser, a severe abuser, will get their victim to where they don't talk to family, they don't go to family gatherings, they don't do the things they used to do. They isolate you so you feel alone, and then you feel like you need this group.
Exactly.
And I was thinking a little bit about Colby, and we know that last year was probably pretty crazy for everybody involved, but I'm curious how much she talked to Colby before she really got on board with Chad.
Yeah, I don't know. I would be interested to see that as well, or know that.
Yeah, I mean, did the communication change? We know he said that Tylee's texts were very different, but I'm curious about his mom. Did she call him as much, or did that drop off? Did he start to see a lack of updates? Apparently Kay and Larry did with JJ.
Yeah.
I mean, she was begging in, August to see him on FaceTime?
Yeah. Yeah, I think August 10th was the last time she talked to him. It was like 35 seconds.
Yeah. And then what happens after that is these people who are being brought into this cult, they kind of they develop an unquestioning devotion to the leaders of this group or the members, and then submission. So what you might have questioned a week or two before, eventually you submit to it and just understand that's part of it. And I think that's maybe where Lori got in trouble, is when she allowed herself to not question stuff.
Yeah. And you can look at her past and see that there were issues, and she had issues with a lot of things. And I think you throw this in the mix with somebody telling her, you're great. This is what you are. This is who you are. This is what we do.
Right.
So I think it was easy for her to jump in and listen to everybody around her.
Yeah, I think so too. And one of the other things that I learned was one of the most common themes in a cult, and this makes sense, is arranged marriages.
Yeah. And there we go back into Alex and Zulema and Melanie and Ian.
Right. I'm almost not convinced. I wouldn't be surprised if when we find out the inner workings of this cult, if we don't find out that Chad had some kind of a polygamy theme he wanted to go at, where maybe he was going to populate the world with a bunch of little Chads. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of what cult leaders do. They're obsessed with sex.
Yeah. And it's crazy to see that when you look at the dates of the breakdown. So they go to do the welfare check on November 26th. They come back on the 27th to do with a search warrant, and everybody is fleeing like rats off a sinking ship.
No kidding.
They're Lori and Chad are fleeing and eventually heading to Hawaii. Melanie and Ian. Melanie goes for Thanksgiving to Ian's house, so she's gone. Alex is gone, and then they end up married like on, I want to say Alex and Zulema got married on the 29th maybe, or 28th, I can't remember. And then Melanie and Ian get married on like the 30th. So it's weird to have all this going on when the cops are, they're coming in and they're saying, okay, we know something's wrong. So they all flee.
Let's go to Vegas.
4 of them get married.
In Vegas.
Well, 6 of them get married.
Right, yeah. They all got married around the same time, if you think about it.
Yeah, I think Lori and Chad got married November 5th, I think.
Yeah.
So that's just very odd.
Very strange. I thought one of the things, too, is terror tactics, where if you seem like you maybe are not on board with an idea, they'll use terror tactics, which is, oh, hey, if you don't do this, you're not going to be one of the 144,000. You're going to be on your own. So they really, it seems like they have ways to keep you in that cult based on how they brainwashed you.
Yeah, it's mind control.
They use that against you. And it's scary that people allow others to control their mind so easily. But in this world we live in, there are a lot of people who don't have strong figures in their life to guide them. And so, like my grandpa used to say, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Yep. So I think the next thing we have coming up hearing wise is it Melanie Pulowski?
Melanie Pulowski, July 1st, which was the day that Chad was going to have his preliminary hearing, but that's been changed. So they have a really big hearing in Arizona with her ex-husband, Brandon, about custody of the kids.
Yeah, there's a ton of information. If you look at one of the lists, Melanie's list is just a lot of text messages. There's some other stuff in there. There's like the majority of it, if I remember right, is a lot of text messages and stuff like that. When you look at Brandon's list,
oh boy,
it is huge with all kind of evidence. And I mean, there is some tech stuff in there, but a lot of it is just like evidence.
It's a lot. So it seems to me like they're really going to try to tie this case in with the custody, as they should. I think Melanie is slap in the middle of this, whether she admits to it or not. I don't think we've heard the last of her role in all of this or what she knew. I don't know that Melanie actually hurt the kids. I don't really think I believe that, but I think she had to have known something. And so it's going to be interesting. But we can kind of run through some of the things they are going to bring up in that hearing.
Well, one of the new things, real quick, that they came out and said she's possibly in Hawaii with Lori.
Oh, yeah. That's what Melanie Gibb is going to testify to in this custody hearing. So now you have Melanie Gibb not only involved in the murder of JJ and Tylee and Tammy and Charles, now she's mixed up in Melanie Pulowski's custody hearing.
Yeah, and that's like a game changer because we haven't heard any of that. Melanie Pulowski didn't mention that. I think Nate asked her when's the last time she saw the kids, and she kind of, I don't remember the exact date, but just different things. She didn't. We never heard her come out and say, "Oh, I was in Hawaii with Lori."
I don't think anybody knew that because on the message boards, on the Facebook groups, everybody was freaking out over that little bit of information. It could be very interesting. And I just think, see, here's the thing, though. I don't know that we're going to hear anything about this hearing because it is about child custody. And usually those kind of hearings are sealed by default.
Yes, because minors are involved.
Right. So we may not hear anything that comes out of this courtroom. And, I mean, that's how it should be when you're talking about children. But I would love to be a fly on the wall.
Maybe they will, like black it out. What is it? Redact or whatever.
Right. And I also wonder, too, I know here where we live, if you want to go sit in on family court sessions, you can.
Yeah, I would be interested. That'll be a packed courtroom.
Yeah. So I think things may leak out about it. It just may be that the lawyers or the court staff themselves can't release any details. But people who are in there observing, I'm sure there'll be a no video or a no electronic policy just to protect the kids. But they don't have to be there either. So just going through the list of some of the things that they are going to bring out. They're going to bring up Ian Pulowski's criminal charges, which was a domestic violence charge in April of 2012.
Yeah, I didn't know about that one either.
I didn't know about that either. I looked this case up online and found it. I'm not sure that anything came of it, but it was an issue with that. It seems like he's definitely going to bring up, obviously he doesn't want his kids in the middle of this hot mess. But I think, too, if you're looking at somebody who has abused or who has been charged with domestic violence in the past, that's always a concern in family court when you're trying to get custody of your kids and the ex-spouse is living with somebody.
Yeah, and we know Natalie has from the get-go been helping Kay and Larry in that whole case, which is she's his ex-wife. So
right, there are several things in here about life insurance policies, payments, texts about the life insurance policy. And
where have we heard that before?
All over the case.
Yeah.
With Charles and Tammy and now Brandon. There's such a common theme that I think Melanie's going to be very hard pressed to prove that she knew nothing about this attempt on his life. Just my opinion.
Yep.
So there are some surveillance images from October 2nd and 3rd. And what are those from, Fruit Loop?
I would think those are from the storage unit in Rexburg, where on October 2nd, Lori and Chad go in and put the Jeep seat and the Jeep tire in storage. And then the following day, the 3rd of October, Lori and Alex go in and take it out.
And I think the reason, obviously, they're doing that is because they can prove that Brandon said a silencer came out of the back window. The tire was not on the Jeep. So they're going to pretty much, put that up in court and say, so you don't know anything about this, but there's your uncle and your mom and, and Chad doing this. I just wonder what they have on her. Cell phone ping wise or digital. It's going to be interesting to see if any of that comes out.
Yeah. Where was Melanie Pulowski when that happened?
Yeah. I don't know if we have a timeline for her around that, but it will be interesting. So they're also going to show not only the image, but they're going to show an East Idaho news article, which is titled Enhanced Video Shows Who Visited Lori Daybell's Storage Unit the Same Day Her Relative Was Shot in Arizona.
Yeah, and we've heard that there's better video. There's HD. And I want to throw this out here. If you pull up that storage unit website, on it says, separate wording or whatever is like bright. It says high definition surveillance cameras, whatever.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, you're the smartest people I know.
Yeah. So the other things that are going to be brought in is Melanie's Facebook post where she offered a reward for information on where her kids were. And this was November 2nd, 2019. So at this point, everybody but Alex has died. And she wanted to know where her kids were. I think do you know how much she offered?
I want to say it was like $10,000 or something.
Yeah, it was a lot. They're bringing that in. And then they're also bringing in the Facebook post that she made. It was actually, I think, a letter that was drafted by her lawyer that just essentially slams Brandon. It's just a character assassination, and they're going to bring that in. There is a Fox 10 email regarding Jason. Is it Mao?
Yes.
Okay, because whatever. And then the responses from the Daybell children. I'm not sure where that comes in.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they
clue.
met at we talked about this before, I think, on the other podcast at the cookie party. I don't know.
Yeah, or the memorial for their mother.
Could be.
They're also going to enter in the transcript from the interview that Melanie and Ian did with Nate at East Idaho News. And then there's some comments from Ian's Facebook that they want to talk about. And then there's just text messages, a lot of text messages between Melanie and Brandon's parents. So it seems like a lot of people were messaging her throughout this. I think the difference with Melanie is that she had an extended family that actually cared and checked in on her. I don't think Lori had that.
You know what's, if you look at the dates, what's weird, and you just mentioned it a minute ago, and okay, so she, Tammy Daybell was, her memorial service was October 23rd, right? So the other thing that happened on October 23rd was the custody hearing for with Melanie and Brandon, and Melanie didn't show.
Yeah, and he, by default, I think that was the finalization of the divorce?
It was temporary custody.
Okay. Yeah, so he, by default, obviously got full custody. And what date was that? I'm sorry.
October 23rd.
Okay, so, they're busy.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't move to Rexburg until the 31st of October. As we know, the private investigator filmed them, her and Alex, moving their stuff in their U-Haul truck or whatever.
Right.
So she doesn't really move to Rexburg until October 31st.
I wonder if that maybe was when she was in Hawaii with Lori when she skipped out on her, child custody hearing.
Well, if you remember, Lori went to Tammy's memorial service.
That's right.
So
yeah. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. The other thing that we were looking at were some dates in November about the welfare check.
Yes.
And I didn't know until tonight that they actually started surveillance on Lori November 1st.
Yeah, I didn't either. And we read that and we were like, wait, what?
Yeah, I thought, okay, did they know something was because at that point, you have to remember, November 1st, everybody except for Alex was dead. The kids were dead. Charles was dead. Tammy was dead. And for a minute, I thought, were they catching on to her earlier than when they had the welfare check? But that related to what, Fruit Loop?
That was related to the attempt on Brandon's life. So they knew they had Charles' Jeep there. They knew Charles had passed away. So his Jeep, was sitting out in front of Brandon's house. So they were, November 1st started surveillance on Lori in connection to that attempted murder is what it is.
Yeah, oh man. I don't think we've seen the half of the arrest, to be honest with you. I mean, I kind of think eventually Melanie's going to get arrested.
And you go back, and if you remember if you look at Ian's quote, his document that he wrote that ended up on his old computer and Natalie, his ex-wife, found. If you look at that document, it's pretty straight on with what's happened so far. So in that document, he says Melanie, says, could they have possibly, try to kill Brandon? Did Alex, try to kill Brandon or whatever?
Come on. Look, Alex helps her move out of her house October 31st. She moves to Rexburg. She's getting arrested for trespassing. I don't know if she got arrested twice.
Yeah.
I know once she did.
It was twice.
Was it twice?
Yeah.
Okay.
The 12th, November 12th, and then November 14th.
And then you got Uncle Alex driving her there to get the kids.
Yeah. in the dark. Like one of the arrests was at 10:30 p.m.
You can't tell me she didn't know about an attempt on Brandon's life. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, she says by her own words that her and Alex were really close.
Well, yeah, it seems that way. It seems like actually once Melanie kind of not moved up there, but once Melanie really came in the picture, it seems like they were always together.
Yeah. And I think she even made the comment when he would be on his truck route, he would call her and they would talk like for a long time.
Yeah.
As he's driving his truck.
I think that all of these references to life insurance policies in this document for her hearing coming up, I think what we're going to find is maybe the common theme of wealthy spouse has a big life insurance policy and oops, I mean, it between the marriages and the life insurance policies, there's common themes in all of this.
Yeah. And again, we talk about the rats fleeing the sinking ship.
Oh, yeah.
So Melanie gets the call on the way to spend Thanksgiving with Ian's family that somebody's broken into her house. Now, we know that it was the police who went in and had the search warrant and went in. But, I mean, I think they were just trying to get her to call back so they could, speak with her. And she just says, oh, well, she'll call back later. It's okay.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention in the cult thing, and I saw this, and we talked about the difference. There's a video of Melanie before all this cult stuff started, and she just seems like a normal mom at home. She has one of her smaller kids. I would say the kid's maybe not even quite a year. And she's talking about, I think, a triathlon or a marathon that she and Brandon are going to do. And she's just sort of chatting in the camera. Her speech pattern and facial expressions are so different than watching the East Idaho News interviews with Nate. And one of the cult characteristics, interestingly enough, slow speech, rigid facial expressions and posture, and memory impairment. At times, now it could be she was trying to think of her answer to where she wasn't giving away that she's deep in this cult and probably has got some splaining to do. But even you could see her talk and then she would stop and kind of think. So I just thought that was interesting because that was something that we just had noticed before I read on the cult stuff that these are, because you said she seems different in that video.
Yeah, it's totally different. Now I get it. She's in her house. She's just filming herself. Like, I get that. But just how she acts and everything is totally different.
Right. But I could watch Melanie Gibbs' interview with Nate Eaton and get a good sense of how she would talk to me if we were in a room together. With Melanie, there were two totally separate ways she delivered every word that I just thought it was weird. So I think the last couple of things we'll talk about is Melanie Gibbs' letter. I'm not going to read. It was 7 pages, and I think half or more than half of it was scripture. But she essentially said that the reason she was deceived, and this is her words, is prepper pride.
Hey, can I point out real quick? This letter was written to LDS people on the AVAL site.
Right. So it was a little hard to read for me. It was...
it's things we don't understand.
Yeah, because I was reading some of the Bible verses and they seemed a little different, but we know they kind of, this cult that Chad has definitely adds their own spin. But
you have the Book of Mormon and the Bible, so some of those things she quoted was out of the Book of Mormon, and some of them were out of the Bible.
Okay, well that's why I got confused.
Yep.
And then Melanie Pulaski put out her own statement after the bodies were found. And this really kind of griped me a bit. It made me a little ill. So she says, my cousins are beautiful souls. But if you knew Tylee, she would probably be given the biggest eye roll at all the drama unfolding in the media. What?
That was ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. So Tylee's going to roll her eyes because they found their remains and the people who did this to them are going to face justice. What an odd statement.
Okay, don't say anything like that statement. It was painful. They've brutally murdered someone, your niece, and you make that statement that she would be rolling her eyes.
I think she would be happy that law enforcement has finally found them so that she and JJ could be put to rest and be able to finally rest in peace. And then I don't think Tylee would be upset that the media's caught on to this. I just thought that was such a really weird statement to put in a. It's almost like she still had to get in there. Oh, this is just a big blow up in the media, which is what she told Ian, which is what she professes. This will blow over. It's just the media's got it out of proportion. And then and in a letter that she's acknowledging her niece is dead. Her nephew's dead. She says that.
Yeah. This is what I want to hear from Summer and Janice and Melanie. I'm sorry. I was wrong.
Right.
I mean, that's all you can say.
But really, I don't expect that to ever happen. These people, I mean, we know that Lori's parents have done very questionable things in their past as far as with law. Somebody pretended to be, what was it, a lawyer?
Yeah, he pretended, her dad, he pretended to be an attorney. Her mom faked her own death.
Oh, wow.
Just all these things. And you see that some of them never own up to things.
Yeah.
And they always make an excuse as to why this happened and why that happened. And we can look at Lori, who she's on her 5th husband?
Yep, number 5.
And something is wrong.
Oh, yeah, something's definitely wrong. I mean, look, I totally believe that Lori, a lot of the reason she's in jail is because she got brainwashed. I mean, it's clear if you have 5 husbands, you have some sort of an issue in owning up to your mistakes. I don't think she's ever said that anything was her fault. But I do think Lori just got slammed in this. And I think Chad was an opportunist and saw that Lori was the perfect one.
Yeah. I mean, Colby, Colby's her son, and he's alive. So something drastically changed in her mind.
Right.
And we see Charles, and I want to touch on this just briefly. We see, Charles going twice to the police and is trying to get help for her. Says something's wrong, something's not right. I'm worried about my kids. And just real quick, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too long, and then Melanie Gibb, who she's seeing this stuff, but you got to remember she's in that same group. So people, are attacking her saying, you should have said something. Charles tried to.
Right.
I mean, what's she going to go? She's going to go to the police and say, she says her kids are zombies. Right.
And I think too, for me personally, I don't really, try to argue with people online about it. I think people put way too much on Melanie Gibbs' shoulders. There were a lot of people that could have raised the alarm, and they didn't. And it started, Charles did.
Yeah.
But the people that could have done something about it didn't do anything.
Well, and you find out that the school, the Life Institute for Education, when Lori and
Lawrence Institute.
Lawrence Institute, okay. It's Life in the abbreviation.
Oh, okay.
I was close.
You were right.
I was right. Kind of, sort of. So, you find out there that Lori tells them that Charles committed suicide. So they find out that's not true, and they have to report that to Child Services. So that's another thing that was reported.
Right. It's just so many missed
that's
opportunities.
three different instances where it was reported and nothing was done. And I mean, what's Melanie Gibb going to say?
Right.
I mean,
look, at the end of the day, you just don't think your best friend's capable of it. I mean, we don't know what Melanie was told about Charles or Tammy's death.
We don't know what Lori told her.
And if you think about it, Melanie Gibb definitely was eyeball deep in this cult. So
yeah, and she's a follower.
She could have seen those deaths as kind of a verification that Chad and Lori are exalted beings.
Yeah.
So if she's on board with the thought process, Charles dies, Tammy dies, she might not have even been looking at it from a murder standpoint, but more of this is part of the prophecy.
Yeah. And I go back to Kay Woodcock's post. She posted on one that I saw right before the first interview with Nate came out. And people were saying, this and that. And she said, I don't care. She's talking now. I don't care what's happened in the past. She's talking now. She can help us find these kids.
Right. Because I honestly think if if Melanie Gibb, she's been cooperating from the beginning. They made that clear in the affidavit.
Yeah.
Was it I think it was December of 2019 that she started cooperating. Look, hindsight's 2020, I'm sure now. When she heard the zombie talk about Tylee and JJ, she wishes she had done something, but...
Sure. But she's sitting there and they tell her, oh, he's going to live with Kay. And then Lori calls her and gives her the whole spiel. Oh, yeah, we met up. He's with Kay. You know, This is what happened. This is what... So she has no clue. And if you listen to the interview, she says her world was turned upside down when Chad calls her and says, if the cops call, don't answer.
Right. Now, I do wonder why did it take her days to call the cops back, but I think maybe she was scared. At that point, the kids are dead anyway. There was no chance to save them at the point that they reached out to Melanie Gibb.
Yeah.
And I think people forget that, which is if you look at Melanie as somebody who is just wrapped up in a cult, you can understand maybe why she didn't call. But for me, Fruit Loop, if a friend of mine told me, hey, my kids are gone to grandma's for a couple of months, everything's cool, why would I call child services?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much lies and deceit everywhere all over this, and it stems from Chad and Lori.
Exactly. That's the main ones you're going to have to blame. Maybe more. We don't know yet. We don't know the whole story. I have a feeling we don't know half of the story, and we'll find out. But that's all we got for you guys tonight. We'll be back this week. I think we maybe get some news on something this week. It's just a gut feeling I have. So we'll see if that happens. We'll go live not live. We will upload a new podcast that night. We found that recording these are a lot better. We're able to stop if we need to do something or research something, and it just goes a little more fluid. But if you have questions about anything, shoot us a tweet, find us on Facebook, and we'll answer your questions on the air. We'll talk about what you want to talk about. So I'm Gigi.
And I'm Fruit Loop.
And you guys have a good one.